In Civ 6 or Civilization 6, there's nothing worse than the Deity AI walking into your cities and taking everything before you can even formulate a response. In this Civilization 6 guide, I'll be going step by step with an example of how to turn every AI early invasion into a historical recreation of Stalingrad. Now, before we get started in the ass busting, this is an edited Deity game with 8 civs on a tiny map meant for 4 players. That's right, we're rubbing butts on this one to guarantee I get that stank AI look from one of them, so I don't have to re-roll. I'm playing France, who's got as many bonuses to defense as a 1 HP slinger about to get fisted by some modern armor, so if it works for France, it's going to be able to work for anybody each and every time. Starting off with the early build order, this one is pretty easy because it's one I use in most games anyways, so it's not like, oh, I start near an aggressive civ, I have to change up my build order. This is the one I use for almost every game I have, and there really isn't a lot to build in the first few turns anyways. I go for double slinger into monument, which is going to help us out with exploration, because scouts give me aneurysms, and some early defense against barbarians, and eventually other civs. 2 is good enough for now, as afterwards you can get started on builders, settlers, districts even, while making sure to keep your gold all topped up in case of an invasion and you need to upgrade your slingers. You can go for some warriors, I guess, but it really isn't the best idea because the AI will always have the advantage, since usually they won't attack unless they're close enough to your cities anyway, and have a significant military advantage, aka usually on Emperor Plus. Your starting warrior, and maybe one more, maybe another if you really need it, is good enough to take away the AI's sort of, I guess, focus from on your cities to the unit, in which you can then use your archers from the backline to attack, while your fortified warrior tries his best to not get put on a shirt. And warriors don't even have a ranged attack, meaning they'll take damage in both your turn and the AI's turn in combat, leaving them weaker than a Russian squadron in Ukraine after a couple of turns, and unable to perform any operations. Also, if the AI has battlecry on their warriors, and you don't, you might as well rename your warriors to barbecue chicken, because with 7 extra combat strength, on top of the other bonuses they get to combat on King Difficulty Plus, you have no chance in a wrestling match between both warriors. Not to mention, the AI will still have more units than you, otherwise they probably wouldn't declare the war. So, what should you do? How can this 5 combat strength wet paper towel 1 range slinger even help you at all? It's not necessarily the slinger we want, it's the big daddy of all Civilization 6 units, the archer. The slingers are built just so you can immediately upgrade them for the low cost of 60 gold and send them off to war if you do get declared on by the AI. For techs and civics, it's really only one technology you need, and that's going to be archery. If you ever spawn within 10 tiles of another civ's units, you beeline archery, especially if you're not confident in your abilities to defend. With all the setups we've done in the build order and with archery, we can make our cities as impenetrable as Kevin McAllister's house when left home alone. The great thing about archery and this tech order is the fact that animal husbandry is almost always useful in most games, as finding horses for more yields, or even being able to build pastures anyway is worth it in most games, so it's not as if you have to go through a wasted tech before you go ahead and get archery itself. Next off, archery can be boosted by a kill with the slinger on any unit, which shouldn't be too hard considering that you'll in all likelihood have early game barbarians. Maybe you declare war on a city-state who has like a 1 HP warrior before immediately making peace. It doesn't matter. After getting the boost to archery, you'll have a 40% cost decrease, making it so that archery is a lot more palatable if you have other things you need to be building. Archery itself isn't that expensive anyways though, so you don't even really need to kill a unit with the slinger to get the Eureka. Either way, you should be able to get it in about 10 turns maximum, and animal husbandry should take less than that time, so maybe 17 turns max, probably a little less, in order for you to get animal husbandry and archery, and be well set for an early game invasion. Now, if you do have something to go for, like for example a religion, it does become a little bit difficult because you want to get the religion as soon as possible, and to do that you have to go astrology and skip out on archery. I'd go astrology, probably take the risk, because if your entire game plan revolves around you finding a religion or around you getting this one district, then a lot of the times it is probably better for you to just skip out on archery just a little bit, unless of course the AI spawns right beside you and you see some early signs of, I guess, they're coming to attack you. That's when you immediately drop everything and go towards archery. Now, how do you tell when the AI is about to attack you? Now that we've set up our numerous trap cards, we have to be able to tell when the AI will come after us in the early game of Civilization 6. Let's talk about some key signs that'll tell you when the AI is preparing to turn your anus's settings from new to used, and one of them is getting denounced, just like the Netherlands did to me in this game. Now, it's not always the case, as sometimes you fail to meet the AI's agenda, like for example existing within Chadrugupta's sphere of influence, or not trading with the Netherlands. But I'll tell you something, you're never going to fail to meet life's expectations after being a TheCivLifeR subscriber. Leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on future videos and to get 6 inches where it matters. But back to the video, if the AI denounces you for just plain not liking you, you're in trouble. Like every attractive girl I met in high school, the AI will sometimes just not like you and denounce you for no reason whatsoever. That's a lie. In my experience, the only time they'll ever do this is if they want your cities and are just trying to clear up their conscience a little bit by painting you as the boogeyman. Getting denounced in this way is almost 100% because they're coming after you, like Wilhelmina did to me in this game. But there are other more reliable ways to tell if the AI is coming after you or not, as getting denounced isn't exactly, just say 4K or anything. If the AI is building troops up on your border or massing troops from their territory moving towards yours, which we'll get to countering that maneuver in a minute, they are 100% coming after you, just like you can see in this Wilhelmina invasion. If they have units on their border, I'm sorry to say, they're coming after you in 2 turns or less, so let's hope you actually got archers out in time. Sometimes it can be too late, if all of a sudden you didn't explore the north or whatever and you see a massed up army on your nation's borders, and you're like, I'll see you guys next week. But most of the time, some of your other units will see the AI sending their army in your direction. Now, if it's just 1 or 2 warriors, don't worry, but if it's like 5 warriors and 3 slingers, then yeah, they're coming after you, and I hope you have some gold for the archers lying around. The final telltale sign is rare, but is almost 100% accurate. If you see a green smiling bubble in the AI portrait, a lot of the time it means that they like you, and they want to be your friends, right? And of course, sending that declaration of friendship will forever cement your bond as best buds for the rest of the game, or at least 30 turns. But if the AI refuses, despite the fact that they are friendly with you, oh boy, especially if they are near you, it almost always means they're coming after you. Now, this is super rare, so it isn't the most helpful tip, I guess, but if they don't want to make friends with you despite the smiling green bubble, wait a turn to ensure it isn't a bug, then after that it's code red and it's time to build up the army. Now, most of the time, spying is frowned upon in our society, and for good reason. Unless you're the government, it's punishable in a court of law, and it's just plain creepy. But in this case, it's necessary. Have some forward observer units on some hills in between you and the closest AI cities, especially if they're within 10 tiles of another civ, with no civs or city-states in between. You just take one of your units and park them on a hill or something in between those territories. If the AI moves a large army your direction, you'll see it, and you'll have an extra 5 to 6 turns, allowing you to build up your defenses and start praying if you're religious. Forward observers is a great idea to have, as they can help you prepare for war if the AI shows none of the common "I'm coming for your pickle" signs we just discussed, and you'll be able to tell if they are coming with malicious intent or not. This also helps you send units to explore indirectly, mainly because if you know they haven't sent the army yet, you can afford to take your units and just start exploring on your own for new spots for cities and whatever, and take out some barbarians without the fear of being caught by surprise in Civilization 6. Now, the AI has sent an offensive force against you, and they're about to declare war. You got some archers and are prepared for the potential onslaught, but there is one thing you can do to ensure success. Every, and I mean every time, declare war first. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, as the international community is going to view you as the aggressor, even though the enemy clearly has units positioned on your borders. If you declare war on them, you will immediately be viewed as the bad guy with grievance penalties and the like. But there's a reason for this, and why you should do it every time. In my game, I declared war on Australia first, and as you can see, I can't make peace until at least 10 turns afterwards. I made sure not to destroy too many Australian troops just so I didn't reduce their military strength to sort of skew the data, as the only thing I took out was a vampire who automatically recharges and is sent back to the capital anyway, so it isn't too big. After 10 turns, Australia still has around triple my military strength, and with a 40 combat strength vampire, they almost assuredly have swordsmen or horsemen lying around. But since I'm the one who declared war on the AI first, they immediately go from I gotta kick his ass to I gotta get out of here. I don't know what it is about the AI, but if you're the one to initiate the war, they will always accept a white piece after 10 turns no matter what. And if the AI is going to come after you anyways, why wait? If you do end up losing your army and are struggling, you can always just white piece them soon afterwards anyway, which isn't going to be a luxury you can afford if they declare war on you. Now, I don't know how this works if you're about to lose a city or even your capital, as even the AI can recognize an advantage when they see it, but for most situations, you will 100% be able to white piece after 10 turns anyways. Another method you can use is to get another AI civ to declare war on your aggressor. As the Germans have not so kindly showed us, getting spit roasted from two sides almost always guarantees failure. But with another civ, the AI will at least move some troops off the border, which will hopefully remove some pressure on your forces. It didn't happen this game because Zhao's a bitch, but in most cases you can do this as another form of help. Although with Civilization 6 archers, the only help you'll really need is a priest for all the sins you're about to commit. Now let's get into the schmeat of the video, the actual combat. How do you send the enemy forces to a live Steve Irwin meet and greet in considerable numbers? First off, defensive positions. Even with the AI and their extra combat strength, my warrior fortified on a hill to let me take them on 2-on-1. Hills, forests, rivers, and just being fortified are your best friends, as keeping whatever melee units you have alive is important while your archers whittle away the backline. In this experiment, the AI needed 5 total units to take out my warriors with archer support. This is insane, as not only was I able to keep them off my city while I weakened them, but I was also able to heal every turn since I'm fortified in my territory. In this game, I didn't build too many archers at the start, and even went for a settler just to sort of simulate what it would be like to get surprised war on in this scenario. As I created 8 civs on a small map, I knew I was getting invaded. It was pretty much death or taxes, so I didn't go full in on military buildup because I had an unfair knowledge advantage. The other thing to avoid is floodplains and marshes, as they actually give you a penalty when defending, which is just going to get your units 2-shot and killed. Finally, you want to put your own archers on hills so they can keep a defensive bonus as they're weaker than melee units, and so they can attack over forests and woods, therefore increasing their range if there is rough terrain in front of you. The biggest thing about archers is their range, and having to wait until the AI gets within melee range really defeats the purpose, so keeping them on a hill or at least in your city is the best way to do it. Now, after you go ahead and wipe out the enemies, you want to move your army towards an offensive force, I guess. Keep your warriors entrenched and your ranged units firing. I don't recommend building too many units, as it isn't necessary even if the warrior wasn't there. My archers could easily wipe out the invaders, but if you have something like flat, open terrain everywhere, you should build another warrior max, but a lot of the time your starting warrior is enough in these super early wars. Archers are your best friend here, and after you wipe out the invasion force, the AI will be crippled militarily, and you can move on to the offensive. The Netherlands made peace immediately, so I decided to simulate this with the Portuguese. I attacked, invaded, and with me being on hills, I was able to kill their units, and if there were their districts, I would have pillaged them for more yields. Be careful though, as if the AI gets walls or archers of their own, it becomes a lot more risky to do this, and you should retreat unless you can actually take the city. And again, I get another nice peace deal from the Portuguese. For promotions, it's best to get them almost immediately, especially when low on health to heal. Go for Battle Cry for melee units because 7 combat strength is a huge boost unless you're up against Nubia or something, then go Tortoise. For archers, it's different. You have 2 viable pathways with Garrison and Volley. Garrison is best for the 1 or 2 units who will be in the city center all the time, giving them a mind-boggling 10 extra combat strength when in the city. But for most units, Volley is the better option, as the 5 combat strength is more consistent, especially if they are not going to be garrisons at all. And finally, the best part: forcing the AI to retreat with their tail between their legs and being able to make peace with them. Sometimes, if you didn't declare the war, the AI will refuse to make peace even after losing their invasion force. This is a good thing. You can force them to make peace if you start pillaging their districts and attacking their cities, but if they won't, what then? Simple, stay at war. The AI will suffer war weariness penalties from all the units they lost, plus they'll have to spend production on rebuilding their army, spending production on replacing units who aren't going to be as experienced with promotions as your own units, and they'll neglect infrastructure and districts, and you'll eventually be able to pull ahead. Eventually, they will want to make peace, and sometimes you can even get a lot out of it, but mostly if you take out their forward forces, you can get at least a white peace with the invaders, although it shouldn't always be taken if you are trying to settle near them and prevent the AI from sending settlers out. Comment down below some other tips or questions you might have with dealing with an early invasion, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.